Now that we've covered the major toxidromes and classes of poisonous compounds from injurious plants, let's take a closer look at some specific examples of plants. In this lesson, I'll provide key examples of both gymnosperms and angiosperms that have toxic activities. Gymnosperms are naked-seeded, meaning their unfertilized seeds are open to the air to be directly fertilized by pollination, as contrasted with angiosperms that have enclosed seeds with more complex fertilization methods. Cycads are some of the oldest seed plants, and they predate the dinosaurs. All cycads and zamias have poisonous fleshy seeds. Here are some examples of toxic species. We have fern palm, false sago palm, and kunti. These plants contain toxic azoxyglycosides. If the azoxyglycosides are washed out through a series of multiple soaking steps, the materials can actually be eaten, or flour made from them can be eaten. While they do have some traditional food uses following this proper processing and removal of the poisonous elements, the toxicity of these species should be taken incredibly seriously. For example, pets are very susceptible to sago palm poisoning and will exhibit symptoms in 12 hours of diarrhea, vomiting, weakness, seizures, and liver damage. The major azoxyglycoside responsible for these symptoms is sikacin, shown here. Another important plant is that of the yew tree. The yew tree plays a prominent role in historic folklore as a sacred plant, and its durable wood was preferred for the creation of longbows. Today, the yew tree is perhaps best known for being the source of an important anti-cancer drug, Taxol. In addition to Taxol, which occurs in low levels in the plant, the yew is also rich in taxines. Taxines are cardiotoxic with a lethal dose of 4 to 20 milligrams per kilogram. They are rapidly absorbed from the gastrointestinal tract to the circulatory system and can affect the sodium-potassium transport. Sudden death occurs with trembling, labored breathing, and collapse. Most deaths have been seen in animals that have foraged on the leaves, and fortunately, human deaths have been quite rare. The fleshy red aril seen in the image above is actually eaten by humans, but the inner seed has to be spit out. Another important plant is that of Ginkgo biloba. It's the only living species of the Ginkgophyta division. You may be familiar with the use of ginkgo leaves in dietary supplements for memory support. However, you may not be aware that the seeds of this plant contain the neurotoxin aptly named ginkgotoxin, which is structurally similar to vitamin B6. Although the seeds are consumed as a food, heavy consumption, especially by children, can result in toxic effects, including loss of consciousness, convulsions, and death. Dumb cane is an example of a very common house plant, but it's also very dangerous, especially to curious children and pets. It contains an irritant juice rich in calcium oxalate crystals that irritate the tissues and cause a burning sensation upon contact. Exposure to the juice can result in blisters, swelling, and can even result in asphyxiation due to blockages in the breathing passageways. In general, the Apiaceae family is rich in these calcium oxalates. Moving on to plant lectins, let's talk a bit more about ricin. Ricin is very toxic if inhaled, injected, or ingested. Ricin exposures can also occur through the eyes or damaged skin. Ingestion of ricin causes pain, inflammation, and hemorrhage in the mucosal membranes of the gastrointestinal system. GI symptoms will quickly move on to severe nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, dysphagia, which is difficulty swallowing. Feces and vomit will be bloody also because of the GI hemorrhaging. The rapid GI fluid loss causes low blood volume, and this can trigger multiple organ failure. Symptoms differ depending on the route of exposure. Early symptoms of ricin inhalation can include cough and fever. Exposure through the skin or by inhalation can also cause an allergic reaction with swelling of the lips and eyes, bronchial irritation, sore throat, wheezing, skin redness, and blisters. One thing to note is that you may have heard about castor oil. And importantly, ricin is not oil soluble, and for this reason, castor bean oil, which is rich in fatty acids and is commonly used to manufacture soaps, lubricants, and other products, does not contain this potent toxin. Now, similar to ricin, we have Abrus precatorius, also known as the rosary pea plant, and this is a member of the Fabaceae or bean family. This is a widespread invasive plant in the tropics and subtropics, and it can even be found in warm temperate zones throughout the state of Florida, for example. It can be found in some markets in the tropics for local handmade jewelry due to that beautiful, vibrant red and black color of the seeds. The toxic element of this plant is the lectin abrin. Abrin and abric acid are released into the gut if the seeds are chewed. Abrin works by bonding to cell transporters on cell membranes, and then once inside the cells, it acts to prevent protein synthesis. This is very similar to ricin. Abrin can cause severe gastrointestinal distress with nausea, vomiting, convulsions, liver failure in humans and animals, and is fatal. Notably, the symptoms of abrin poisoning tend to be much more severe than those of ricin, and the amount of abrin that causes fatal outcomes is a mere fraction, just 1/75th of that of ricin. Now let's move on to some other types of plant poisons, and we'll start here with colchicine. Colchicine is derived from the autumn crocus, also known as Colchicum autumnale and the Colchicaceae family. And this is actually used as a medicine to treat gouty arthritis. However, the therapeutic window for this drug, or the difference between poison and medicine, is narrow, and it must be administered under the close care of a physician. The toxic compounds in the plant include colchicine and other alkaloids, with the highest concentration of these being found in the seeds and the corm of the plant. The amount of colchicine in even 2 to 3 seeds can kill. Symptoms from poisoning include burning of the throat and stomach, vomiting, purging, weak, quick pulse, kidney failure, respiratory failure, and this can often be fatal. The beautiful pink flowers of this plant have indeed been fatal to children when eaten. Foxgloves, or Digitalis species, belong to the Plantaginaceae family. The plants share a distinctive bell-shaped flower. They also share a class of compounds known as the Digitalis glycosides, which are cardiac glycosides that impact the cardiac tissues. All parts of this plant are poisonous to humans and can result in fatal outcomes if consumed. Digitoxin is one of the cardiac glycosides from this genus that has been successfully developed into a pharmaceutical medication to treat patients with heart failure. However, this compound is rarely used in medicine today, with another cardiac glycoside known as digoxin being preferred, as it is eliminated from the body through the kidneys much more rapidly. As with all cardiac glycosides, the therapeutic window here is quite narrow, and drug levels have to be carefully controlled for. Symptoms of digitalis poisoning from the plant or the medication overdose includes vomiting, purging, severe headache, irregular heartbeat and pulse, convulsion, and sudden death. Similar to the foxglove, oleander, known as Nerium oleander in the Apocynaceae family, is also rich in cardiac glycosides. Though it is native to the Mediterranean, it is commonly cultivated as a landscaping plant across the globe. Poisoning events have occurred due to misidentification with other plants, confusing it for plants like eucalyptus, or ingestion by children and pets, or suicide attempts. All parts of the plant are toxic, and the compound oleandrin is the main cardiac glycoside present. Symptoms of poisoning following ingestion are similar to those of other cardiac glycosides and include nausea, vomiting, drops in blood pressure, irregular heart rhythms, abdominal pain, and death. Now let's move on to some interesting species here in the Asteraceae family. These are groundsels that belong to the Senecio genus, and these have been subject to cases of mistaken identity in the past, especially regarding confusion with Gnaphilium or cudweeds that are used in herbal remedies for colds. Groundsels have been known to cause toxicity in livestock. The poisonous elements are these hepatotoxic pyrrolizidine alkaloids like cynacionine, shown here, that cause liver damage in the form of hepatic veno-occlusive disease and can result in acute illness and even death in humans and animals. Symptoms include nausea, vomiting, enlarged liver, and bloody diarrhea. Toxicity is cumulative, and symptoms may not be exhibited for months after eating this plant. Affected livestock will show a scaly nose, a rough, dry coat, and they'll also void liquid bile-stained feces. Deuterostromonium is a plant found in the Solanaceae family. It's also known by the common names of jimsonweed and thorn apple. It has been used in traditional medicine and has hallucinogenic properties for which it has also been abused, leading to cases of anticholinergic poisoning. The main toxic compounds are scopolamine and hyoscine, most found in the leaves, unripe capsules, and especially the seeds. Even small amounts of the plant can be fatal, with symptoms that are similar to those seen in Atropa belladonna poisoning, and this includes flushed skin, dilated pupils, dry mouth, delirium, and death from respiratory failure. These are all typical of the anticholinergic toxidrome. Now here are some plants from the carrot family or the Apiaceae family. All these cicuta species are toxic, and they're also known as water hemlocks. Other common names include cowbane and water parsnip. Here you can see an example of Cicuta maculata with the umbel-formed inflorescence typical to the Apiaceae family. The plant has been confused for parsnips due to the clustered roots, but consumption of those roots can prove deadly. Cicutoxin is the major poisonous compound found in the root and in the above ground parts. It is a violent convulsant that acts directly on the central nervous system. Following consumption, humans experience nausea, vomiting, and tremors in the first hour, followed by convulsions and additional projectile vomiting. Foraging livestock have been known to succumb to the poisonous roots, causing death in as little as 15 minutes. Much like cicuta, the genus Conium also appears in the Apiaceae family, and this is known as poison hemlock or Conium maculatum. It's sometimes confused with water hemlock, which we just discussed. This species contains toxic piperidine alkaloids, including conine, shown here. Conine has also been reported in the yellow pitcher plant Sarracenia flava of the Sarraceniaceae family. Consumption of conine or poison hemlock results in flaccid paralysis, similar to that observed in curare poisons. Paralytic symptoms can begin within 30 minutes, resulting in death after a few hours. Socrates famously died after consuming a liquid infused with hemlock. This would have been a terrifying experience, as the central nervous system is not affected by the toxic compounds, and the victim remains conscious of paralysis until respiratory paralysis leads to death. Now here's an example of some poisonous compounds found in some of our very common fruits. Amygdalin is an example of a cyanogenic glycoside found in the seeds or kernels of many different common fruits, including apricots, plums, peaches, apples, and bitter almonds. All of these are in the Rosaceae family. Other cyanogenic glycosides are found in other plant families as well. You can recall linamarin from Manihot esculenta or cassava tubers in the Euphorbiaceae family. Cyanogenic glycosides share the feature that when they are broken down, they release hydrogen cyanide, which at sufficient levels can actually cause cyanide poisoning. I want to go on to some other interesting poisonous plants. This one is Strychnos nux-vomica. The active poisonous agents in this plant are indole alkaloids, which include strychnine and brucine from the dried ripe seeds as well as other parts of the plant. Symptoms of poisoning include agitation, muscle spasms, rapid heartbeat, hypertension, and convulsions. And seizures can begin within 15 minutes of exposure and last 12 to 24 hours. Very high doses cause respiratory failure and brain death within 30 minutes of exposure. Strychnine has been used as a rodenticide to kill pests. It is extremely toxic, and strychnine is fatal to humans at doses as low as 60 to 90 milligrams. Let's move on now to Aristolochia species. Aristolochic acids are found in the genus Aristolochia, which is also known as birthworts. Aristolochic acid 1 is the most abundant of these, and they're known for their carcinogenic or cancer-causing, mutagenic, and nephrotoxic or kidney-destroying properties. Despite a long history of use in traditional medicine dating back to early Greek, Roman, Ayurvedic, and traditional Chinese medicine, the potential for members of this genus to cause serious kidney damage is a major concern. For example, the use of Aristolochia feng qi in weight loss formulations has led to cases of nephropathy, and other reports have also shown higher rates of liver cancer in patients who consume herbal remedies containing species of this genus. Another really relevant poison today is that of the opiate class. The opiate poppy has been used medicinally to relieve pain for millennia, yet it has also been used as a recreational drug and abused for just as long. Today, we face an opioid epidemic of addiction which has led to more than 50,000 deaths due to opioid overdoses in the U.S. in 2019 alone. The opium poppy latex, shown here with a freshly cut pod, contains several opiate alkaloids, including morphine and codeine, among others. Poisoning symptoms are typical of the opioid toxidrome and include central nervous system depression, meiosis or constriction of the pupils, and respiratory depression. In addition to internal poisons, contact allergic dermatitis caused by certain plants can cause quite a bit of pain and suffering in the afflicted patient. To avoid exposure, it's important to learn to recognize key species responsible for this reaction that grow in your local environment. Here are some examples from the U.S. eastern forest. A good way to recognize them is with the saying, "Leaves of three, leave them be." Rhus dermatitis actually refers to a group of plants that are the leading causes of allergic contact dermatitis. Urushiol, present in the oleoresin of these plants, is responsible for the skin effects. Rhus is the old name or the synonym name for the currently accepted genus name of Toxicodendron in the Anacardiaceae family. But Rhus dermatitis also broadly applies to other examples of members of the Anacardiaceae family listed here, not all of which are included in the genus Toxicodendron. Here are some examples of plants to recognize that are responsible for cases of Rhus dermatitis. There's poison oak, poison ivy, and poison sumac, all in the Toxicodendron genus. Rhus dermatitis can also be caused by mango rinds in the genus Mangifera. Other species include Semicarpus anacardium, or the Indian marking nut. There's also the lacquer tree, used to make shiny black artistic objects, and the cashew nut in the genus Anacardium can also cause Rhus dermatitis. Rhus dermatitis is produced by exposure of the skin to a portion of a bruised plant. Typically, the skin eruption appears within 2 days and involves redness and itching. Then, papules appear with fluid-filled vesicles. A common feature is a linear array where the plant brushed across the skin. Most mild to moderate cases can be managed with topical over-the-counter corticosteroids, calamine lotion, and oral antihistamines. Severe cases may require prescription steroids, and you should always consult with your dermatologist to determine the best treatment plan. We've covered many different examples of injurious plants in this lesson and others. The best way to stay safe and maintain a safe household for yourself, your family, and your pets is to stay aware of potentially toxic species that are used as houseplants and in landscaping. While many of those species are selected due to their pest resilience, it's important to stay aware of their risks. The same is true of plants that livestock may forage on. In the U.S., resources from the USDA on common toxic weeds in pastureland can be found online. The key is to recognize the power of these plants. Some have both medicinal and highly poisonous effects, and you should contact your poison control center and seek emergency medical care immediately if you ever experience or encounter a case of potential poisoning from plants or fungi, their toxic compounds, or any other agent.